Sid Griffin, welcome to the Garage Door. Musician, composer, author, broadcaster, and a humanitarian. Sid, thank you for joining us. Sid, long time, I could say founder of the Long Ryders. Most of our listeners probably know Sid from the Long Ryders band. Also, his early punk band, the Unclaimed. Had to get that in
Yeah.
there, Sid.
Yeah. They have an
Also,
anthology coming out this summer. Check it out.
Oh,
is that gonna
okay,
be
cool.
is that going to be on Cherry Red?
No, the Unclaimed anthology is on an Italian label whose name I cannot remember. But it's got some of my material, so I was kind of flattered.
That's cool.
So anyway, Cherry Red Records wanted to talk about Long Ryders real fast. They have reissued in 2 and 3 and 4 disc sets, Two Fisted Tales, State of Our Union, Final Walled Songs, and Native Sons. The latest Long Ryders album is Psychedelic Country Soul. Sid, Craig and I were talking earlier, and it seems like the Psychedelic Country Soul has a little bit more toward the country side as opposed to some of the other Long Ryders stuff. Would you agree, or am I completely off base there?
I guess. I mean, it's Stephen McCarthy is what made us different from everybody in LA is when the Long Ryders started, nobody played country-esque music. After a few months, we discovered Rank and File. And they even, as far as I know, predated Jason and the Nashville Scorchers, as they were then called. But looking back at Jason and the Nashville Scorchers, they were primarily a kick-ass rock and roll band.
Yeah.
They would then slow it down into the streets of Baltimore. They weren't really that country, if you ask me. But so when we got Steven, it put us on at least a par in terms of country and Western authenticity with Rank and File, because like the two Texans in Rank and File, the late Tony Kinman and his brother Chip, or Alejandro is a Texan,
yeah,
and Slim, we had Steven hadn't been in garage and rock and roll bands in the way that the others of us had. He had primarily, if not exclusively, been in straight country and Western bands. He liked Western swing like Bob Wills, and he will tell you right to your face that Merle Haggard's more important to him than Bob Dylan, and is as talented as Bob Dylan, which I wouldn't really dispute. I'm not going to argue that. But so that made us different, having Stephen McCarthy in the band. We would have been, I feel, a good rock and roll band without Stephen McCarthy, but we would not have been the particular punch or elixir that we were as the Long Ryders until we had Stephen in the lineup. That's for sure.
Yeah, agreed. And that's evident in almost all the LPs. And you can tell, being a Kentucky native, I think that music is kind of I call myself a Kentucky native, even though I'm Southern Indiana, same genetic pool. It's in grew up going down, listening to somebody play at the little Campbellsburg Mill. They're all bluegrass players.
Well, I used to go up to Bloomington. There was a nice bluegrass scene because my sister went to IU, and they had a great series of concerts there. The Beach Boys played there, Stephen Stills Manassas. So I was up in Bloomington a lot, and I saw, just getting slight off the subject, but on the same thing, because it's all one big pot, I saw a very, well, to me, early gig by John Cougar Mellencamp in Bloomington. Yep. And he was good. And of course, I don't think he had a record out. And no, he wouldn't have had a record out. No. Didn't his first album come out in 77?
76 it was on there on Mainstream. Okay. Yeah.
Well, those Johnny Cougar records, I don't even know he had the first Johnny Cougar record out. And I, like everybody that I thought he was good, but you'd never have guessed he'd become the star that he was. I mean, Springsteen played the University of Kentucky in Lexington for $1 on the first album. And friends of mine went and said it was great, but you'd never have guessed that it would be the Bruce Springsteen all those years later. And I saw Mellencamp early on, and I think I talked to him. But that might be gilding the lily. That might be enhancing the story. I think I spoke to him because it wasn't a well-attended gig. It was a bloody tavern in Bloomington. Yeah. So anyway, I was in Southern Indiana for, in New Albany, not so much Clarksville or Jeffersonville.
New Albany, yep.
New Albany had a little, oh God, what was the gig there? There was a like 150, 200 seat folky thing that, bluegrass bands and acoustic hippie things. And I remember my sister and somebody told me America played there on their very first tour out of California, this little New Albany club. But I didn't go to that. But the Horse with No Name band. So anyway, I was up there all the time.
Well, Sid, how did a Louisville kid get out to L.A. and how did the Long Ryders get formed? How did you get out? How did you get the kahunas to go out there? Do you remember?
Well, what happened is we had I was in a high school band. The Doobie Brothers were a reference to marijuana, and we used to call beer Frosties in reference to the ice that would accumulate and give a slight frost to the the can. So we were the Frosties as a stupid kid's name for, and it sounds so sissy now, but that's what's the name of the band. And I went out, we were popular in Louisville, and I went out to Southern California. I said, I'll go first and I'll blaze a trail, then you guys come out. And then nobody ever did. Two of the guys came out like, oh my God, a year later and stayed for a drunken 4 or 5 day weekend thing and then went home, never came back. And one of the other guys came out 7 years later and tried to live there and didn't like it. So by that time, I'd already had the Unclaimed, the Long Ryders were up and running. And, but that was it. I went out there, I said, come on, I'll go first. And just last February, I was on this cruise, which the Sirius XM cruise of the Caribbean with all these country rock acts. And I felt weird about it because those cruise ships pollute the seas. But on the other hand, it was us and all these bands. And my band all wanted to go. Lucinda Williams, Steve Earle, blah, blah, blah. So we're on this cruise. Long story short is to get on we landed at the airport, got on a bus that was booked by the cruise. So on the bus, there are a lot of people who are going to be on the cruise. And I sat in the bench in front of Terry Adams of NRBQ. And I said, Terry, we've met 100 times before. I'm Sid Griffin. I was a friend of Steve Ferguson's, the late Steve Ferguson.
Yep.
And he and I were talking, and because there's traffic in Miami, so it took us forever to get to the harbor to get on the boat. And he and I were talking, and I told him about because he knew the Long Ryders were, of course, because we covered I Want You Bad, which he wrote. And it was our single. So Terry and he knew who I was, and we talked, and he said, I knew my sister went to high school with Keith Spring, was in the Whole Wheat Horns. And Terry told me that's exactly what happened to NRBQ. Him, Steve Ferguson, and Orton, I think was the guy's name, from Soul Incorporated, went down to Miami in 68 or 69. And some of the other Louisvillian musicians said, we'll come down when you blaze a trail. No one ever did. So he said the same thing happened to me when Steve and I started NRBQ or kept NRBQ alive in Miami. We then met Joey Spompanato and all that crowd. But it was odd. I said, that's the exact same thing happened to me. I'll go first and everyone will come out. I'd been to New York and didn't really like it in the summer of 76. So in the fall of 77, I went out to California.
As basically a young kid, did you know anybody before you headed out, or did you just go?
I knew I had a lovely cousin named Mason who died of cancer years ago, about 8 years ago at age 59, way too young. And he had been in a R&B band in the 60s, like Booker T and the MGs kind of thing, that was so popular. They were in Owensboro, Kentucky, in Western Kentucky. And what? Mom.
Okay.
And they, night, son. And they were extremely popular. They used to play from Owensboro. They play like the University of Florida frat circuit. And so they're driving like 800 miles for gigs. And his father made him give it up. And so I knew I had a kindred spirit in northeastern LA, where it's called La Cañada, Flint Ridge, and the La Crescenta. It's near sort of Pasadena, kind of north of LA. And so I stayed with him for the first month or so. Then I got a small, very ugly, very humble place in the San Fernando Valley, and just never looked back. But I had an ally out there, one cousin, first cousin, that I knew pretty well. So it wasn't like I went out, no one to look after.
Completely
Thank
cold,
God.
right.
Yeah, I knew one guy, and he and I stayed in touch. But it's interesting because he didn't really. In fact, he never came to one of my gigs. Now that I look back, he didn't come to the band I had before the Unclaimed, which was called Death Wish, a punk band. He never came to the Unclaimed, and he never came to Long Ryders gig ever. And I think the reason is because he was a brilliant guitar, like a Steve Cropper guitar player, that later got into jazz. I have his Guild in the attic upstairs. It's one of those guitars. It's from 1966, and it's an arch top, and it's the kind of thing, you know, I wouldn't sell it if you guys said, give me $20,000 for it. Yeah. No, it's Cousin Mason. It's his sister gave it to me, said, you know, Mason. Anyway, so I thought about that many times. He never came to see me play when I was out there. And I realized now maybe I should have invited him with more emphasis, but I'm thinking that maybe it just brought it too close to home because he had to quit playing. His dad really my uncle really laid down the law. Right. And I think he missed playing so bad that it was just, I'm not going to see Sid play. It's just going to hurt. So, you know, but I have his guitar, and so and he was a great guy. And
was he a Kentucky boy too, Sid, from Kentucky? Your cousin? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he was from Owensboro in western Kentucky, which is right on the river with Indiana across the river. And just a great guy. But I think it hurt to see me gig because he never, ever came, which is beyond belief when I think about it. But I just, whatever, it's the way it goes. And it was weird. I just fell into the right crowd. I mean, one of the first things I did, I went to this place called Beyond Baroque. It was a poetry arts thing in Venice, California. And there was John Doe and Exene, who were poets then. They weren't, you know, John Doe said, went by his real last name, which ends in ski, as I recall, S-K-I. Yeah. And he says, I'm going to become this conceptual character of John Doe. And I thought, well, yeah, that sounds good. And of course they formed X, and I met Gary Stewart, who later went on to be a huge guy at Rhino Records and then Apple, who's no longer with us. And I met Bill Englund, who's like the #1 reissue guy. If you're getting old tapes together and you want them to sound good, be it Rhino Records, Warner Brothers, Columbia, Time Life, you call Bill Englund. I met all these guys who were my age and just stumbled into the perfect scene at the right time. Just pure dumb luck. And I'm so grateful I went out there. If I'd have gone to New York, which I went to investigate the year before, I just found it rougher, dirtier. It was when the city was in deep financial red ink. And I really did the right thing going to California. I miss California a lot.
Well, I think the vibe that you bring, Sid, I think New York wouldn't mesh with, you know, to me, what I understand. I mean, it wouldn't mesh. But talking about NRBQ real fast, I encourage all our listeners. There's a great NRBQ album called "Boppin' the Blues" with Carl Perkins. Just a great album. Saw the last gig they did in Louisville. Steve came out right before he passed away and played with them.
Wow.
It was a moving moment. Definitely a moving moment.
He had a band called he had a crazy Louisiana Cajun band called, I could go look now that my son's left, but he had a band called something, Jack Salmon or something. And I went and bought their CDs and went to the Steve Ferguson gigs. They were terrific. But like a lot of people, he lost a lot of brain cells to drugs, and it was very sad. I mean, he was a lovely, sweet guy. And as far as I know, clean the last few years of his life. But, you know, he'd done a lot of damage to his liver and kidneys, but what a great guitar player Steve Ferguson was. I mean, really great.
Here's another Louisville band. I don't know if you can see that. 100%, 100 Proof Aged in Soul.
Yes. Well, I saw Minnie Riperton when she was with Rotary Connection.
Yeah. Yes.
And they said, you know that, who did she sing with? She sang, oh God. Anyway, she's now with Rotary Connection, they're going to move to Atlanta. And I saw them play, and I didn't dream Minnie Riperton would, be the star she became. She's also gone, of course. But I mean, I saw a lot of these people. There was an African-American club in the west end of Louisville where, frankly, due to segregation, all the black folks lived. And it was called Joe's Palm Room, which I believe is still there. And I snuck into Joe's a couple of times, and saw, I say snuck in, not because I was white, but because I was underage. And I saw Ike and Tina Turner Review, and Roy Ayers, and all sorts of crazy ass stuff. I saw Rory Gallagher in Louisville.
Oh,
and the guy got stabbed. This is like 72, not far from King's Record Store, which is on the cover of the Roseanne Cash album, King's Record Shop. And it was not far from there. It was, the last time I was in Louisville, it was a pornography shop now called Candid Camera or something like that. But at the time, 47 years ago, it was called Beggar's Banquet. It was a hippie club, ballroom.
Yes.
And I saw Rory Gallagher. And the long story short, it's like his second solo album out. And a long story short is there was a stabbing that night. And so I snuck back home. I had high school the next day, and it was in the Courier-Journal that there had been a stabbing at a rock concert the night before. And I'm eating my oatmeal before going to Ballard High School. My mother's like, I'm so glad you don't go to things like that. And I just thought, don't laugh, don't laugh, don't laugh. I said, yeah, Mom, yeah, it's terrible. A guy got stabbed. That's not funny, a guy got stabbed. But in those days, it was a big deal. Now the violence in our streets of, kids with knives, it's not the page one headline it was back in 72 or whatever. That was a hell of a headline. And I just thought, don't laugh, don't laugh. I didn't know the guy got stabbed. He got stabbed in the men's room. I think it was a drug deal going wrong or something. But I just saw a great show.
Sid, what got you? I know you were born with the talent, but I mean, like seeing the Beatles, or what got you going, saying, I want to do that. I want to do this. Can you think of
Seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show was something I never got out of my system. They looked like they were having so much fun. And it wasn't to get girls, because I was 9 years old. So it wasn't to get girls. That they weren't in the equation yet, but they were having so much fun, and it was so positive and energetic.
The joy,
happy. I used to sort of, like a lot of people for decades, kind of look down on the pre-Rubber Soul Beatles, thinking they were sort of a superficial boy band. And then I was talking to a guy called Willie Nile. I don't know if you guys know who Willie Nile is. And Willie Nile was telling me, he says, my favorite Beatle album is The British A Hard Day's Night. He says, listen to it. It has no filler on it. It's every single song is a John Lennon, Paul McCartney composition. There's no R&B covers. They're crisp. They're professional. They're well recorded. Their singing and playing is tight. And I listened to it. I think the CDs were coming out of the Beatles on, the back catalog, as opposed to anthology and all that. And
87.
I thought, yeah, right. It's a terrific record. Even things that I thought for years were square, like I'm happy just to dance with you. I mean, it's a terrific record. It's the level of songwriting and the accomplished musicianship is just genius. And so now I realize the early Beatles were as good, if not in many ways better than the latter period Beatles, when they had, they had some excesses. By the time of Let It Be, that's not even that great a record. But anyway.
No, it's not. Let It Be. Now, if you can. I don't know if you can see behind me. I'm not very much of a fan.
Yeah, I mean, Let It Be. It's that Peter Jackson's got they delayed the movie, which is coming out in September the next year, and I'm thinking, how are they going to make Let It Be? Because this is what they want, into a positive thing. Seeing the film was such a downer. I'm really surprised they let that film out. It's so unhappy and such a downer, that film. It's like, oh, God.
But Sid, Michael Lindsay Hogg, the director, he chose to portray that. Like any documentary, you get raw footage, and there's a lot of stuff in there. I don't know if you know Bunny. Do you know Bunny, Carlos? Bunny and I go back and forth, and we've got like the 32 set discs. And we're looking to listen to the Let It Be stuff, and there's a lot of instances where they're just having fun. I mean, it depends on how it wants to be portrayed. Yeah, there were some drag moments in it, but there's also some really good moments.
And I've never understood then why put out that movie, because it's such a downer. And the Michael Lindsay Hogg, is he still alive?
Yes.
Because he's dear friends with my friend Anna Menzies, who lives in Richmond. She used to be the booking agent for Olympic Studios in the 60s. Oh. And then was snagged by Keith Richards to be his PA in the 70s at the apogee of his drug abuse. So she knows Michael Lindsay Hogg. But just up the road is Tony Bramwell of the Beatles Inner Circle. And Bramwell told me once, he's a great guy. He told me once,
I know Tony. I've met him several times,
Yeah, I said, I don't know him well, but I said, Tony, Sid Griffin. He knew, how you doing? And I live just down the way. How you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And he said, Sid, I'm the only person that I know of that was on the Rolling Stone and Beatles payroll. And I was only on the Rolling Stones payroll for most of 1968. But think about it. I look back and I think that's amazing. I was getting a check from the Beatles for years and a check from the Stones because I was working for them in 68. Well, and I just thought that is amazing. And a lot of these guys, as you all probably know, Troy, Tony gets paid a fair whack to just go talk about the Beatles. He just goes to a convention and they give him a 5-star hotel and he just talks about the Beatles and takes questions.
Well, he's a Liverpool guy. He grew up with them in Liverpool. He was friends with Neil Aspinall and, good friends with them. And, Sid, have you ever heard Louisville hosts a thing now called Abbey Road on the River? Have you heard
Yeah,
of it?
I've never been. I went to they had the one in Southern California at first, and they just called it something unimaginative like Beetle Fest. And now it's Abbey Road on the River. I'm told it's just amazing.
It's fun. You should come. You should come. It's really great. Matter of fact, if you want to go, just let me know. Send me, and I'll contact with you email
Well,
after we're
the
done.
one they had in L.A. was at the Bonaventure Hotel, and it was a great record collectors thing too, because the record collectors all had stalls that weren't just Beatles centric. But anyway, at the one in 79 or 80, I'm going to have to say 79. The guys at Blue Meanie Records, the Beatles obsessed store in El Cajon, California.
Yep, know it.
The Blue Meanie guys bought these. They bought from the Columbia warehouse and said, "You can just buy this stuff, take it out." And they bought these boxes, and it was DJ mint copy singles by the Byrds, Paul Revere and the Raiders, and all their '60s acts, The Circle, and all that stuff. So they were selling me like 8 Miles High on colored vinyl for
red vinyl.
Red vinyl, white label, red type, with the picture sleeve of the guys on the bench at the concrete bench on the fountain across from the Troubadour. I recognize the fountain, and that was like $2 or $3. That's it. I bought that for like $2 or $3. That's that. They're standing on a concrete bench, about 100 yards from the Troubadour nightclub in L.A. And I was going to say, so I got all these things, and I'm, great stuff. I love those guys. I can even see them now. Some of them probably dead now, but they were all big, like the Allman Brothers, but sort of chubby Allman Brothers. Everyone had blonde hair parted in the middle, resting on their shoulders. They looked like Vikings. So I bought all this stuff from Blue Meanie Records. I picked all this stuff, Craig, and I got in line to buy it. And as you do, you're looking down at like 6 singles and a couple of LPs and maybe a program of a tour or something. And when I looked up, not just in front of me, but in front of that guy was Tom Evans of Badfinger.
Yep.
And not Pete Ham and not Joey. What's the other guy's name?
There was Pete Ham, Mike Gibbons, Joey Molland.
It was Joey Molland then. Joey Molland and Tom Evans. Joey Molland wasn't the drummer, right? It was the guitar players.
Right. Joey's guitar. Yeah.
Okay, so it was Joey Molland and Tom Evans. Evans later took his life, sad to say.
Yeah, Pete Ham did too. Pete Ham did too.
Yeah, Ham did too. They were buying, I'll never forget it, Badfinger stuff. Tons of it on Apple. And they got ripped off by their manager, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have a lot of money.
Stan Pauly. We just did a whole show with Robert Rodriguez on Badfinger. Yeah, just horrible. Just makes you cry.
Yeah.
Makes you want to cry. So anyway, when they got up there, the Blue Meanie guys are like, they knew him by name. They knew the Blue Meanie guys by name. It's like, hi, Fred. Hi, Tony. Hi, Troy. Hi, Craig. Hi, Sid.
Yeah.
Hey, Joey. Hey, Tom. And I heard them say, the guys were going, don't you guys have all this stuff? And the 2 Badfinger guys looked up and said, no, none of it.
Yeah.
We have to buy our own stuff.
Wow.
We don't have anything left. We didn't, And I says, fuck, how screwed up is that?
Yeah.
Never forget that. Anyway, my friend Sandy Campbell swears by Abbey Road in the River, so I'll come one day.
Yes, please do, Sid. Please do. It'd be great. Now, using that as a Badfinger as a jumping off point, were you knowledgeable enough when you were forming the Long Ryders to not have some difficulties, or did you guys get kind of sucked into the seedy side of the business with some bad deals too?
No, we had our manager, but our attorney was a guy named Gary Stamler, and he worked for Apple USA, not Steve Jobs, Ringo Starr.
Right.
He was one of like 8 lawyers or 5 lawyers for Apple USA, and a high-powered guy. The Long Ryders stories, everyone thought were going to be a big deal, and we blew it with that beer commercial and blah, blah, blah. So, whatever. But the point of the story is we had a high-powered attorney in Gary Stamler, and he was on the Apple board for the label, the Beatles, and he's Ringo's main, or one of Ringo's main North American attorneys. So he was all over that like a cheap suit. He was just like, don't do this, don't. They got it. He was great, and it's just a shame we didn't, break a single or make a better album or whatever, because we'd have really been in, such a powerful position. But I can't complain. I've had a wonderful life.
Well, Sid, I would say that though you guys are very influential, and I
Yeah.
think you are a big deal. I mean,
Well,
I love when I first heard it.
The aforementioned Billy Inglott's a dear friend of mine, the guy that does the reissues for everybody, and I mean everybody. And he told me, he said, look, the Unclaimed alone helped kickstart the 60s, them and the Last, the L-A-S-T band, the Last. You two guys kicked off the 60s guitar band thing on the West Coast. And after that, the Long Ryders, if not the primary, if not the exclusive, rather, Americana band of the day that started it, you were one of the primary 2 or 3. So he said, you've had an incredibly influential career, and I thought, well, that makes me feel pretty good, because when the Long Ryders started, there was no Americana. That didn't exist. Right. Now after we stopped, boom.
Well, to me, you guys, you took some of the essence of the Flying Burrito Brothers and merged it with, I mean, the Beatles. There's that power country stuff in there. In my opinion, I mean, I just think it's great.
Well, on those box sets,
so I don't want to.
On the box sets that you were talking about on Cherry Red Records, I feel the best disc is usually the live record, because we were really good. Yeah. I mean, I don't apologize to anybody for that live act was hot stuff. I mean, some of the records we made are good, and some of them aren't so good. But the live act, I mean, even on the cruise, I had John Langford come up to me. He's in a ton of bands. He was in the Mekons from Leeds, and now he's living in Chicago and is on, what's the Chicago country rock label, indie label?
Alligator.
No, there's another one.
No, okay. Alligator's Blues.
He's John Langford came up here on the cruise and said, "Man, you guys still got it." I thought, that's great, high praise, because he really knows his onions.
Now, Sid, I have to ask, are you into vinyl still? Did you keep any of your records?
No, I had to sell my 6,600 vinyl to pay for my divorce lawyer.
Oh my!
Here's so some of the Hubbard collection.
Wait a minute, I have about 30 albums, and they're all signed. The only ones I kept, I have signed albums by like Brian Wilson and the Everly Brothers. Everything else left by.
Troy probably bought some of them somewhere along the line.
Well, I tried to get that.
I sold them to these guys in LA, and they were one by one on eBay. So, no, I don't have a butcher. I've never had a butcher.
Now, Sid, if you're into 45s, I can send you a few. I've got the Rugby's on blue vinyl. I got an extra copy of that. You and I. If you're into any of that stuff, some people now just are like, I don't care about it.
My son is special needs, to use a euphemism. So he and another guy conspired to destroy the turntable. So we're waiting for him to grow up a little bit, and we'll get another turntable.
Well, Sid, my day gig, I'm a counselor in a middle school, so that explains the hair and the gray coming in. So
he was putting little rubber soldiers and stuff on the turntable and spinning them around, and then throwing stuff at them. And by the time I got there, the expensive turntable didn't work anymore, and the arm was broke. So I talked to a counselor, and this person said, "Wait till he's older and is grown up a bit, and then you get an expensive turntable." So my wife has about 100 albums, and I sold. I don't think I have any of my singles left. I had 11 Spoonful singles with the picture sleeve, because I'm a huge Love and Spoonful fan. But
I was going to say, I hear that in you guys too. I mean, I love Love and Spoonful. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
John Sebastian and Yal. I can never say his name. Sal Yanavansky. I can never say his name right. You know who I'm talking.
Yeah. It's actually pronounced Zolly.
Okay.
Henry Dilt, the photographer, my dear friend, who's in that Laurel Canyon documentary.
Which is
Henry
great.
Dilt, he's been my friend since '84. He's taken many a Long Ryders photograph. He took the cover shot for Psychedelic Country Soul. Henry was roommates with Zolly, even though it looks like Zally. He was roommates with Zalman Yanofsky in the 60s, and has a million funny stories about Zolly. But it's astonishing that it's pronounced Zolly, but it is.
So there's Spoonful. Got all
great.
kinds
One of the great first records my sister and I ever owned. Right there.
Wow.
You need a copy, Sid. You need a copy.
Yeah. No, I've got CDs of all this crap. When I wrote for Mojo and Q, starting around '94, they threw CDs at me as I walked down the street. So I got entire catalogs on CD, but of course no one gives a shit about CDs anymore.
Did you guys hear that Q just folded?
Yeah, I wrote for Q for eons. But the thing is, when I wrote for Q, they sold 200,000 copies an issue. Yeah. And when they died, they were selling 28,000 copies an issue. And all these things in England about Q's gone out of business. I used to read it. Well, that's why it's out of business, buddy.
Yeah.
I mean, so many of these obits of writers and freelance guys said, I used to read it. Well, I was shocked. We were doing 200,000 issues at the Millennium, and it died 2 days ago or 3 days ago at 28,000 copies.
That's crazy.
That is a precipitous fall. I'm wondering, Mojo got up to 120,000 copies when I was writing for them heavily. And I heard it was down to 90, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's down to like 40 or something now. I mean, like my kids, my daughter that's 20, young people do not care about music magazines at all.
No. Mojo, I still was subscribing to Mojo up to about 2 years ago. Just got too expensive here in the States. Now, Sid, how did a Kentucky-born Southern California guy end up in London?
Well, I was dating the singer of the Dream Syndicate. I was dating the singer of the Dream Academy, Kate St. John. So I went to England to be with Kate St. John, and after a while it didn't work out, but I was in England, so here you are.
Now, have you, I have to ask this because this would be my first step. Have you done any of the Fab treks? Have you checked out Abbey Road or any of those things?
I've worked in Abbey Road. Check it out. I've worked there.
Oh, wow.
I've worked in Abbey Road. Yeah. The most recently was about March 2019. I mastered the Gene Clark reissue of No Other for the 4AD company.
Oh, wow.
And I mixed some of it, and then I remastered it. And I remember talking to the kid who was the engineer. He's like 35 years. He was 35 years old. And I said, Abbey Road's such a big deal to people my age and the Beatles and all that. Who's the most famous guy that you've engineered for here at Abbey Road? And he said, McCartney. I said, really? He says, yeah, I've worked with Paul McCartney, Sir Paul McCartney. And I said, do you realize at age 35 what a big deal he is? He says, oh, yeah, I get it. He said, absolutely. I was nervous when I met him, but then within, like 10 minutes, he's a very nice guy. And he's had 50 years of making people not be nervous. So I knew Gene real well. That's a great record.
Yep.
I knew him in LA. He played with the Long Ryders a bunch.
Any recordings of that?
Well, Ivory Tower on Native Sons and then some gigs, but I don't have any cassettes. I mean, he'd call everybody up for feel a whole lot better at the end. And we did a bunch of gigs with him. Tom Stevens of the Long Ryders was in his band for a while.
Oh, very cool.
In fact, Steven plays on one of his solo albums. Stephen McCarthy of the Long Ryders plays on one of Gene's solo albums.
Oh, wow. You don't know which one, is it? Do you? I want to search it out.
I think it's So Rebellious a Lover with Carla Olson.
Okay. Now, have you had any brushes with any of the Fabs? I've had a chance to meet Paul once. I cried. I mean, I did. I know you guys don't look at me that way, but it's so much of a fabric of my life and just a major thing. But he was really cool.
I've never exchanged a greeting with a Fab before. I've seen everybody play but Lennon, but I've never met a member of the Fab Four. I've met Keith Richards and spent an afternoon with him once.
That you remember? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, he was. It was for the Graham Parsons documentary that I did for the BBC. We filmed it, and he was a very nice guy. But at the time he was still a drinker. He ordered one of those like a Fanta orange soda, and then like a fifth of vodka, and drank it in like the hour and a half it took to film him for this documentary, which is a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
And he was very personable. I liked him, but I mean, it was like, it is kind of odd. You're sitting there with Keith Richards. I mean, it's like, what the heck?
Probably a real experience.
Yeah. And he's as close as my wife was at the dinner table tonight. It is an odd experience to be that close to someone that famous. I mean, I know one. Celebrity. I mean, my first wife, Kate St. John, after the Dream Academy, was in the Van Morrison band for years.
Oh.
And the Van Morrison band was primarily great musicians. They weren't record collectors. So because she was in the band, whenever they played in Metropolitan London, I would go to the sound check and the gig. And Van found out I was a record collector. So I would sit literally next to him backstage and have dinner, because he would argue with me about records. His father, back in the Belfast shipyards, collected 78s back in the day of people like Lead Belly and Hank Williams. So Van, he'd say, "What's that record that on chess? I think it's Bo Diddley that he makes a mistake. It's huge." I said, "It's Before You Accuse Me. It's in like D. And instead of going to the 5-4-1, which is D, C, G, 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 he hits D flat. It's just, ah! And he said, "Yeah, that's it. And that was weird, because I tell friends of mine that are huge Van Morrison fans, you've had dinner with Van like 6 times, and they just can't believe it. But no, I've never met a Beatle. Met a Rolling Stone. Met Townsend of The Who, because, again, my wife's dear friend Virginia Astley was Pete Townsend's wife's sister. So I met Townsend many, many times, and he was a lovely guy. Makes a real effort,
Well, Sid, how often do you get a chance to get back here to the States? Are you anything? I mean, hopefully when all this blows over.
Not once my parents died, I stopped coming back a lot. And I usually come over on business. If there's business in LA, I'll come over. Like, we recorded Psychedelic Country Soul at Dr. Dre's studio in San Fernando Valley. It used to be Record One, which was owned by a producer engineer called Val, V-A-L, Gary, G-A-R-A-Y. And he did hit records there like Betty Davis's Eyes for Kim Carnes and stuff like that. Mainstream pop rock classics. He sold it to Dre. Dre's dear friend, Larry Chapman, was the bass player for Parliament Funkadelic. Larry Chapman is my dear friend. So he got us a deal where the writers could record at Dre's place for tuppence, which is an Englishism for very inexpensively. Mm-hmm. So I was in LA for most of the month of November. When did we record it? 2017 or 2016? I don't remember. And then I missed a year or two, and I was in America for early September through like mid-October for 2 tours of the Long Ryders in North America. So in the last 4 years, I've been in America about 8 weeks. Yeah. That's about right.
Any family still in the Louisville area, Sid?
No. Well, yes, I have cousins. I have a beloved cousin. I shouldn't have said no. Henry might see this. I have a beloved cousin, Henry, and his wife, Lynn, that live in the old neighborhood or near the old neighborhood.
Yeah.
And most of my cousins and my sister have all split. And I would like to go back more, but for the short term, this is where,
Yeah.
This is it.
Now,
my kid's in school here.
And do you still play? Go ahead, Troy.
No, go ahead, Craig.
I was just going to say, I know you have another band, the Cole Porters.
No, I've knocked that on the head. That was a straight bluegrass band that I had for about 18 years. And about a year and a half ago, we stopped the Cole Porters because the Long Ryders were heating up with the Psychedelic Country Soul album.
Right.
And I thought, I can't organize 2 bands at the same time. When this September is my birthday, 18th, and that Cole Porters had organized some gigs and behind my back and said, "Look, we haven't played together and it'll be 2 years this September. So we thought we'd do some gigs based around your birthday." And I said, "I'm just in the mood for it." But coronavirus has stopped it. So the COAL, like a chunk of Cole Porters, is an acoustic bluegrass band, and we don't exist anymore. But it's a shame on a number of levels that coronavirus is here. Of course, the people are dying.
Oh yeah.
But on a minor level, just on a personal, very minor level, it did break my heart because I can't tour and I can't even play the neighborhood tavern.
Right.
There's some great little venues, walking distance from where I'm talking to you gentlemen now, and I can't do a gig there.
Yeah.
And we were gonna play some bluegrass. And frankly, they're a good band. Carenza Peacock, the fiddler of the last few years, she's now out in LA playing. She was Royal Academy of Music. She's now out in LA playing with all sorts of famous people.
We've got some friends, it's just a tough time for musicians all over. And we have some friends that are doing kind of what you're doing. You can check out Sid, listeners, if you go to sidgriffin.com, that's his website, all kinds of stuff there, links there.
Yeah.
But now, Sid,
I
you're
put
doing
a song up.
you're doing some quarantine stuff. You're playing live on some quarantine stuff, correct?
Yeah, I did a couple of quarantine concerts, and they're kind of weird. So what I thought I would do is about every 2 or 3 weeks, I'll put up one song that I
nice.
rehearse, and I rehearse the song a lot. Then I try and do it with 1 or 2 takes.
Yeah.
So you can see Jess the Springer Spaniel come in the frame, and my wife sings with me on some songs, and it's just a shame because the neighborhood's got a lot of great musicians in it. There's a couple of guys from the Royal Symphony Orchestra down the street, and when they rehearse, I just throw open the windows in the back and listen. They're just so beautiful.
Yeah.
A bassoonist and a clarinetist, and I just listen to them. They're just so great. They're 1, 2, 3 doors down, but you can still hear them, particularly when they play outside in their back garden. And up there, I'm pointing north. You guys can't see. I'm pointing north. I'm facing north. About a 2-minute walk is the house where the late Amy Winehouse died. She was our neighbor. And then Graham Coxon. I mean, we lived in a terraced house. We're not in a fabulous mansion, but Graham Coxon of Blur has property. I think he was in LA. I've heard he's moved home. He's walking distance from this house, the Blur guitarist.
Yeah.
Are you in the city proper, Sid? Are you in London proper?
Yeah, I'm in central London. And then Viv Albertine, Vivian, used to live here. She's moved a couple of neighborhoods east. She was in the Slits. Yep. And you guys would know who Pete Shelley, the Buzzcocks, is.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
The late Pete Shelley was a neighbor about 6-minute walk north from here. I see Pete on the street all the time. He's no longer with us, God rest his soul. And Mick Jones of The Clash, I can't remember where he lives, but he lives near us because I see him on the street all the time. And we say hello. I don't know him, but we know each other to say hi, but I don't know him. And I see Mick Jones of The Clash. There's a lot of musicians around here that you've heard of, besides, guys starting a band or young people practicing or what have you.
Sounds like the makings of a good bar band. You guys should all get together and.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 rehearsal halls just that way, about a 7-minute walk, and there's 2 or 3 professional rehearsal halls where people like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers rehearse when they come over, or Fleetwood Mac that way. John Henry and what's the other one called? I can't remember what the other one's name is. I'm drawing a blank. I'm getting old. And those are the ones that are north, or the smelly little 30-foot by 25-foot room that kids get to rehearse in with a PA. Right. And the 2 down there, I'm in a very rock and roll part of town. The 2 to the east that you can walk to within 7 or 8 minutes. They have different rooms, and the big room in each place is like a 200-seater with lights and the whole thing.
Oh wow!
Where you practice the kind of gig you do at Louisville Gardens, right?
Yeah.
So and then there's 2 equipment rental places to the east, where if you want to rent a full back line for your European tour, you can get it there. And I get my trucks there, and when we go on a tour. So yeah, so cool. We're in a very, very, very rock and roll music industry neighborhood, right where we are now. And as I said, Tony Bramwell lives up the street. I mean,
he's a character.
I don't know exactly which street, but I know it's walking distance. And there's a lot of people like that. I mean, there's just a whole. Who did I meet the other day that I just thought was a nice neighbor, and she said I used to book the Kinks. Because I went in her house on something. I was helping them move the other day, being like 2 months ago. I helped them move something, and there are all these posters of the Kinks concerts. And he used to be a booking agent for the Kinks. So anyway, there's a lot of that, a lot of aging rockers around here and all that.
Okay. Sid, thank you. Peace, love, and peace. I love you.
Thanks a lot.
We'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you, guys. I'm signing off.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. There you go.